and welcome to the Center for the Performing Arts. I'm Julia, and I'm the Director of Education and Community Engagement at the Center. Now, tonight's program is a special treat, but before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about the Center. We are located in Carmel, Indiana, which is just north of Indianapolis. We have a beautiful campus, and we have three theaters. One is the Palladium, which is our 1,600 seat concert hall. Then across the green space, we have another building that has two venues in it, the Tarkington, which is a 500 seat proscenium arch theater, and the Studio Theater, which is our 200 seat black box theater. In addition to our 6 resident companies, we present artists and musicians from all over the world. We're very fortunate to have such a wonderful facility right here in Indiana. Now, tonight's program is called Car Front Seat, and it's sponsored by Car Global. Before the pandemic hit, the way this program worked would be about 2 months before an artist was to be at the center, we would contact the tour manager and ask permission for a small group of students who were studying that genre to sit in on the sound check, and then they got to meet the artist and have Q&A with them, and then we'd provide dinner and tickets to the performance. But of course, as everyone knows, COVID hit and we had to cancel those live performances. So instead, we decided to take it virtual, and we lined up a whole slew of wonderful presenters. So tonight, we are going to be talking with Lizzi Gee, and we have some students lined up who are all dancers and performers themselves to ask her questions. But we want to take your questions as well. So you'll see if you're joining us on Zoom, there's a little Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. You might want to put your cursor over that. And feel free anytime during the program to type a question in there. And if you're joining us from Facebook, we're monitoring that as well. So please type your questions in the comments. And if we get time, we'll take those. So now I want to tell you about our special presenter, Lizzi Gee. Lizzi is a Broadway and British theater film choreographer and movement director. In addition to being the choreographer for A Christmas Carol on Broadway and the 2014 film Pride, Lizzi Gee's work spans musicals, plays, opera, film, and television. She has worked in many prestigious buildings, including the National Theatre, Old Vic, Young Vic, the English National Opera, Regent's Park Open Air, and numerous West End productions and UK tours. Lizzi is joining us tonight from her home just outside of London, where it is 10 o'clock in the evening. Lizzi, why don't you turn your camera on and join us tonight?
Let me do that. Hello.
There you are. We are
Hi.
so excited to have you join us. And I know you were rushing about, I think you had a class you were teaching tonight.
I did. I have just come from an adult tap class and an adult keep fit. I do one back to back. So yeah. So I'm
Oh,
fit now. I'm
wonderful.
good to
Wonderful.
go.
Well, listen, I'm going to turn my camera off because I want you to tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today. And then I'll come back on when you're ready and we'll get some questions going. How's that sound?
Fantastic.
All
Thank
right.
you. So, as Julia said, my name is Lizzi Gee, and I am a choreographer and movement director who is based in the UK. I started out as a performer. I trained at a theatre school and a local dance school in Yorkshire, which in England is the northern part of England, a little local dance school. And I spent about 16 years training there from the age of about 3. And then I went on to college to train and study further as a dancer, and then became a professional performer and ended up in musicals. And I did Sunset Boulevard, I did a production of Fame, the musical, on tour, and I was also in Mary Poppins in the West End. And halfway through my performing career, well, towards the end of my performing career, earlier than I thought it was going to be, I was offered some fantastic opportunities to be associate choreographers to some really fantastic people like Peter Darling, who choreographed Billy Elliot. And I decided that I knew that choreography was really where my heart was and wanted to be. So I was offered an opportunity to choreograph a show of my own, and I took that opportunity and never stepped back onto the stage as a performer again. Choreography is where my heart lies, and it's what I love doing. And yeah, so now I have been choreographing for about 13 years, and it has seen me, as Julia said, through a lot of movement direction on plays, to big musicals, to working on film. I've worked on a lot of operas, and now I have a Broadway credits to my name, having been in your wonderful country last Christmas, and sadly not this year, but we will be back next year with Christmas Carol, and hopefully more shows to come. At the beginning of this year, I was very fortunate to be asked to be an associate artist at the Old Vic Theatre in London. The Old Vic Theatre is an extremely famous theatre in London. It's over 200 years old, and its artistic director is Matthew Watchus, who is the director of A Christmas Carol on Broadway and in the UK, as well as the director of Matilda and about to be doing the Matilda film. He asked me to come on board as an associate artist to that building earlier on this year, and then COVID struck. So one of the things that I asked Matthew if I could do for the theatre and for our community and our industry was to create a dance piece, like a love letter to the Old Vic and to all those empty buildings that are now not being used anymore at the moment. And so I have a little footage of something to show you called Dance With Me, which I created in June. And I hope you enjoy watching this. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed watching that. And the other person that was dancing with me was a choreographer called Drew McConey. You may know of Drew's name. He choreographed King Kong, which came onto Broadway last year. And he's also a fellow artist at the Old Vic. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed.
That was wonderful. And what a beautiful building.
Yeah, it's a
Beautiful.
stunning building.
So you
Yeah.
said you just came from teaching the adult tap class. If I was to take that class, could I tap like you did in that video?
You know, I can. I will big myself up here. I can teach anyone to tap. I have no. My thing about tap dancing. I'm teaching my one of my boys at the moment to tap, and through the beginning of lockdown, he'd never put a pair of tap shoes on, and now he's doing really hard stuff. So I think you can teach anyone, if you've got the right teacher, maybe.
I think that's a big part of it for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, are you
Yeah.
ready to take some questions?
I am, Julia. Yes, far
Okay,
away.
great. Well, we're going to start with Melina. Melina is a high school student, and I know that she's done quite a few shows herself, and she's a dancer as well. So, Melina, welcome. Why don't you unmute your mic? There you
Hello,
are.
Hi, Melina.
hi. So my question is, what are some differences you have noticed in preparing for productions in different parts of the world since you've traveled so much, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, a lot of the shows that I have started off, they've started off in the UK. So sometimes the show may have transferred. I've done a few shows in Australia where the shows have transferred from original UK production. And the same with Christmas Carol, that was built in the UK. And then when we brought it to Broadway, it was a very, we had to make the show, we had to stage the show quite differently. There's a few differences which I'll talk about with this show. The first one, in the UK, the version of Christmas Carol is set in the round. So the stage is a cross that goes all the way through the auditorium. Seats are taken out to create like a north and south walkway. And then we have an east and west walkway, and the audience is sitting on the stage. They're all around us. It's a very immersive production. And when we knew it was coming to New York, we knew we couldn't rip up a theatre for the sake of 8 weeks. The Old Vic, they own that theatre. They can do what they want with it. Whereas coming to Broadway, we had to sit that same show in a proscenium arch theatre. So we had to restage, redesign, and make the show a bit more what we call end on. So it was facing, more out front, but we still wanted it to feel immersive. We wanted to feel like the audience felt like they were in the show rather than just sort of sitting and spectating the show. So we had to adapt it for its transfer, but also we had to adapt. A lot of the times it's the text that has to adapt, or the subject matter, so that we have mince pies in England, which I know the Americans are like, what's a mince pie? They think it's pie with some mince meat in it. But it's not. It's fruit, and it's this really very sort of festive, traditional thing we have in the UK, and it's in the script, and we hand out mince pies at the beginning of the show to the audience for free, and they hand out satsumas. So we had to go, well, what would they like in America? We bought cookies. So you guys in the States, they all got given bags of cookies, and they didn't get mince pies. And so everyone got free cookies and satsumas, clementines. So I think you have to try and make the show feel like it belongs to that country when they receive it, so that they feel like it's a part of them, rather than they're watching something and they're going, oh, well, I don't really understand what this thing is I'm being told about. I think often it's the script that will adapt, and potentially accents may adapt depending on, like Billy Elliot. They had to try and keep the Geordie accent of Billy Elliot when to Australia, and it's been all over the world, Billy. But I know that they had to try and get them to speak in the same accent that they would have been speaking in if they would have been doing the show in the northwest of England. So often the choreography does often change, which is good for me, but a lot of other people's work has to change when we take shows to other places. I hope that helps answer.
Yeah, that was very interesting too. Thank you.
That's okay.
That's a great question, Melina. Thanks. And I just want to remind everyone I see there's some folks watching us on Facebook, and then there's some other people on Zoom. If you want to, if you're on Facebook, feel free to put a question in the comments and we'll get to that. And if you're joining us here on Zoom, if you put your cursor over the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little Q&A and you can type a question in there as well. Okay, so we'll move on to our next students. And actually, we have a sister team, Sarah and Rachel. And they are college students, but they're home right now because they're taking their first semester online. And you can tell that they're twins, and they're also seasoned performers. So Sarah and Rachel, why don't you ask us your question?
Hi, Lizzie.
Hi.
My question is, what inspires you to choreograph?
What inspires me to choreograph? So it's often the subject matter. It will be, there's two things. One is the story. What is the story? Am I interested in the story? And secondly, obviously it's the music, and those two things going together, and how you can tell a story through physical movement, be it if just body language, or be it full-blown dancing. To be able to portray a story through your art form is, I think, a gift that we're able to do this, and as you as a performer, that you're able to put that story across through your body. So I think as a choreographer, they're the two things I'm looking out for when I'm approached about a project. Am I interested in the story? Does it excite me? Do I want to know more? And how can my movement enhance that and keep pushing that story forward? And that's sometimes on plays where it's not music driven, and then you have shows where you love a soundtrack and you're like, I adore that score, Pippin, there's some amazing scores out there, West Side, all those shows, and you're like, I'd love to dance to that kind of music. And then it's about finding your own take on that kind of a show, and how you can put your own influences within the movement. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a really great answer.
That's okay.
I have
another one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which show or performance has been your favorite to choreograph, and why?
So I did a production of A Little Shop of Horrors, which I know you've had. Everyone knows that show, I think. The Man-Eating Plant. And I did it at the Open Air Theatre in Regent's Park, which is this stunning sort of 1,200 seat theatre out in the middle of this amazing woods parkland in the UK, in central London. And it's a magical theatre because you don't need much to make the event just feel special just by arriving, because you're sitting there at 7 o'clock, the sun is still out, the birds are tweeting, there's picnic hampers, there's food, and it's all gorgeous. And then as the show starts, it's like summertime, so there's no lighting at the beginning of the show, and as you get into the second act and the intervals happened and you're going through the show, obviously the sky's getting darker, the lights are starting to come through, and the event just becomes more and more and more magical as it goes on. So I was fortunate enough to be asked to choreograph Little Shop of Horrors, and we had an amazing team. The best part about my job is collaborating. I mean, otherwise you just do all the things yourself if you thought you had all the answers. So I had the most amazing designer called Tom Scott and an amazing female director called Maria Alberg, and the two of them wanted to set it quite differently to how the original production was done. And we were drawing influences on the plant being a drag queen. So we had a guy called Vicky Vox, or a lady called Vicky Vox, from LA, who's quite a famous drag queen, and amazing singing voice, incredible singing voice. And we flew her over, and she played Audrey too. And there's never been a version where it's not been a plant before. It's always been, a puppet that's played the plant. And I studied the Vogue balling scene, the downtown New York voguing and whacking, because it came from this drag queen influences. It influenced the choreography. And I taught myself, I had someone come to teach me to whack and vogue. And I made the general sort of plant language of the choreography from that downtown New York Vogue ball scene, so that it had influences. So the plant was kind of this crazy sort of, every now and then she'd vogue or she'd whack, and the three ronettes that are kind of attached to the plant in the story, and they're from her world. That was their way they talked and they sang, and they had all this attitude, but yet they would do all these amazing sort of crazy whacking arms, and it was like their language. It was the way they moved in their world within the story of the show. So it was great to be able to visit a show which was done in the 60s and a bit like this and had its own sort of stereotypical movement to it, and to be able to put a whole new twist on it because of this one idea of making our plant a drag queen, and how then it took me into a whole other world of research for the movement of the show. And it went down a storm and everyone loved it, and we had standing ovations every night, and yeah, it was incredible thing to do. Yeah, one of my favorites.
And that sounds like a wonderful show. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
And so the reviews were all positive with that change.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it was
great. That's one of my favorite shows too.
Yeah.
It's such a fun one.
It's a brilliant show. Yeah.
Well, Sarah and Rachel, thanks for that question. And for all the students, hang out, because we may have time to come to each one of you again to see if you have another question, which I'm sure you probably do. So Katie, you're up next. And Katie, I know, has to get to ballet class in a little bit, and she's a dancer. So Katie, what's your question?
My question is, how do you recover from after a performance?
As a performer, do you mean as a performer when you've done a performance and your body needs recovering, or for me as a creative?
Like after, like we usually just like stay up late hanging together, and I know that isn't like the best thing to do.
Yeah, I think yes. So I think from my job, the tricky thing is we leave shows after they've opened. So we have all the rehearsals, and then you have all your previews where you're changing the show every day and you're up all hours trying to make the best version you can, and then you have your press night. Now, of course, the press night is the night that everyone is working towards, and okay, so that night is the night that we definitely stay out late and everyone is partying on a press night. That's a given, okay? But up until that point, our recovery is not great, I would say, because we are constantly thinking about how we could keep improving the show. The show is all you're thinking about. So you come home and you talk about the show, and you send emails about the show, and then you write notes or you change something. So you don't really have a downtime. And I think that's what's tricky about what we do in our industry, is that we don't allow ourselves much downtime until after press night. So I think what we often do is, I often say I work really hard up until the point of press night, and then I try not to then jump straight back into another show, because I need that downtime, that recovery time to see my boys. I have 2 boys, to be with my husband, to be a mom again, and to be around again. I think that's the juggle that we have in life, is to be able to, I call it work hard, play hard. That's my motto. So, I book a holiday, or I have a couple of nights away, or I have a meal out with my family. And that's sort of that's my reward from working hard. Yeah. If that helps you at all. Cool.
Thank you.
That's okay.
That was a great question, Katie. And we actually have one coming in from Facebook. And Becky asks, how do you make sure to continue learning and honing your craft this far into your career?
So I think you've hit the nail on the head. You never stop learning. You never stop learning. So for me, it's about watching other people's work, going to see as many productions as possible, and of a wide variety. So I'm from a musical theatre performer background, but I go and see a lot of plays. I see a lot of opera. I try and watch a lot of different films, so that you're constantly broadening your vision and your perspective on other people's work, be it good or bad. Everyone learns from what we're watching. I think you take what you want from it. So I think for me, it's about always trying to educate yourself in looking at other people's art form and on their work, and directors and how they direct, and why are they taking that choice. And so I'm not just looking at it from a dance point of view, I'm looking at it from a narrative point of view as well, and an all-round vision.
Right.
And I think as well, you have to I think it's always good to sort of, maybe as a performer as well, is to constantly be asking yourself, what could I improve in my own, physically, what could I improve? Could I be a stronger ballet dancer, or could I be stronger at tap? And I always think I should probably learn a bit more ballroom. Like I would love to be a ballroom dancer. So it's things like constantly going, what else could I teach myself that I can't yet do? So I think that's a nice luxury to have, I guess, to be able to try and learn a new skill all the time. Yeah.
And I know I read in your bio that you do a lot of like physical language and character work with folks.
Yeah.
And I would think that it's all about the power of observation. I can remember,
Uh-huh.
my degree is in theater and I used to do, performances and acting. And I can remember basing a character off the movements of a squirrel, observing a
Uh-huh.
squirrel,
Uh-huh.
and I'm
Yes.
wondering, is that something you do? Just always be cognizant of your surroundings and observe and then pull from that
Yeah.
in your work.
And I think you do it without even you don't realize you're doing it. You're doing it unconsciously. I watch people walk, and I see how people walk, and then I'll go, I'll go, oh, look at their walk, and no one else will have realized that they're slightly bowed or they're rolling in on their ankles. I watch their hips move, and I clock it all the time of different people's mannerisms or the little things that make them tick. I'm doing a film at the moment. And what my main character, he's actually from the States, he's coming over to play this lead role, but we are studying about 3 or 4 different well-known characters, like the Joker from the Batman movie.
Sure.
He didn't dance, but the way he went down that staircase in that phenomenal way in the end of that sequence is something I'm drawing on as a reference point for this character's physical movement for his role that he's about to partake on. So I think that thing of like, what can you learn from other people? And constantly the environment that you're in is always making you go, oh, that's interesting. And then it makes you tick and it makes you think.
Do you keep a journal?
I do. I sometimes write things in my phone, write notes in my phone. And I have like on YouTube, I'll have like little files. Like when I was doing Christmas Carol, I was studying a lot of Kayleys and sort of group dance, barn dancing. And I just go, oh, I love that video. Put it into a file. So I can go back and just, sort of remind myself of different flavors. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I want to see if any of the students have any follow-up questions. And if not, I want to talk to you a little bit more about your work in Johannesburg. Melina, do you have any more questions?
Yes, I do. Hi again.
Hiya.
My question is, have you noticed any differences in the audience's reaction, like culturally? Like I know that Italians say something like "bravo" at the end of at an end of a show. So, like, what are some differences in the?
I think, good question. I think we much prefer your American audiences than we do in the UK. I think. And I guess like in Italy, they're throwing roses on the stage at the end of operas, and it's very grand. So in a theatre production in the UK, we very rarely stand on our feet. Or it takes an amazing show to get an audience on their feet, and when an audience is on their feet, you've done a good job. And also just that first round of applause. So let's say you're in a musical, and the first number happens, or the leading actor comes on, and the leading actor might be really, really famous. In the UK, we sit and we wait and we watch, and then the number finishes and then we applaud. Whereas in the States, the actor walks on stage, and before they've opened their mouth, they've had a round of applause. And you're like, they've done nothing so far. But there's a real, sort of excitement in the States. It feels more, and people are on their feet in like seconds. They're on their feet to stand and applaud you. So that's a brilliant thing to be part of that and to witness that, because I think we're a lot more reserved in the UK. We're a tougher crowd, I think, to go, oh yeah, no, it was okay, it was very good. And I think, like you say, in Italy, I know that there are a lot more that they shout, out calling out. In opera, they call out bravo, bravo a lot. And the creative team in a opera production, they do at the English National Opera, I'm sure it's the same at the Met, is the creative team come on the opening night, and they all take a bow, and they're given flowers, and they are part of that company to say, we helped create this show. And in the UK, you're sitting with your notepad, or you're already in the bar going, oh, I hope it was okay. It's a very different, in theatre, musical theatre and plays, you don't have that. You don't go on stage and take the glory of the bow. I quite like working in opera, because it means I get to wear a nice dress and walk on stage and take a curtsy. So that's sort of the differences in different shows, and different sort of culturally, how audiences spectate shows. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it
That's
does.
hilarious. Great
Yeah,
question, Melina.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Well, I had no idea that there was that difference. I've seen, play at the Globe, but I was standing anyway because I was a groundling.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's a lot warmer.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's go to the sisters, Sarah and Rachel. And do you have one more question that you'd like to ask?
Yes. What
Hi.
are some of your goals as a choreographer you'd like to accomplish in the future?
Some of my goals. Do you know, I used to think, because I have been close many times to being on a list, shall I say, of awards. And everyone thinks that those awards, I think you always go, oh, it'd be amazing to have an Olivier Award and to win a Tony Award. And I knew my name was on a shortlist for Tonys this year. I knew because Christmas Carol was in the categories. And we won, we had 5 nominations, not one, but we have 5 nominations. But I also knew that it was between me as Christmas Carol, and the 4 musicals. So my name was just 5, me within the 5. I thought, it's never going to happen. And a part of you sort of goes, oh, it'd be nice if it happened. But actually, I think what is good to know is that isn't the be all and end all of your success, is having an award. I think it's about making sure that your work is always well thought of and that you're always trying to better yourself. And I think for me personally, the things I'd love to do more are, I'd love to work more in film. I've done quite a bit of film, but I'd love to do more of it. I find working for the camera quite exciting. It's a whole different way of working, really, for camera than it is for live audience. And I would love to do, I'd love to help more. This is a sort of a less theatrical sort of goal, but I'd love to be able to find ways of helping. I do this a little bit in Johannesburg, but helping people who aren't fortunate enough to access the arts and the expensive college fees, or their communities don't have the outreach and the sources to be able to study dance and the arts as a whole. I'd love to be able to tap into that more, into providing more education from what I was given on a plate. I went to my local dance school. It was all easy for me. My parents worked hard for me to be able to do what I wanted to do. And I think there are a lot of areas in the world that can't access that and don't have that luxury of a dance school on their doorstep. So I'd like to do a little bit more of that as well. Giving back, basically.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
And then I have another question. What is most challenging about the work that you do, but then also what's the most rewarding part of it?
I think what's most challenging, I think it sometimes depends on time, how much time you have. This show I'm about to do, I say this film, it's for NBC. It's the new NBC Christmas musical. There is one coming out and I'm choreographing it. So it'll be on your screens in like about 8 weeks time, and I haven't even started yet. But the challenge is I have 3.5 weeks to do it. 3.5 weeks is, I wouldn't even have that for a musical in the UK. And this is a very short space of time to try and mount a huge musical production. And often time is what is the battle for us, because if I had all the time in the world, I'd have said, oh, I'll do 4 months of workshops and I'll try this version out and I'll try that version out, then we'll rewrite the scripts, and you have all the time to keep playing and playing. But this is like, you have to do it and this is your time frame, and there is no leeway for me to go, oh, I can have some more time, can I have 3 more weeks? There is no more time. It has to be filmed on that day and it has to be delivered to NBC. So I think that's the challenge, is being prepared, being on it, and being ready to also, if an actor goes, I don't feel comfortable doing this, to be able to deliver something very, very quickly to make them feel comfortable, or to change to a script change or to a song change, and to be able to adapt very, very quickly. That's, I guess, is the challenging part. But I also love it, because the best thing about that then in sort of parallel with that is collaboration. Collaborating is the best thing, because I love it. I love working with amazing directors, amazing designers, amazing actors and performers and dancers. And then when you put all those elements together, you have a golden ticket, everything about it is just glorious. And I think that's the joy of having all those people in the room to bounce off and go, oh my, I had no idea we were going to create this thing. And then after 6 hours in a rehearsal room, you created it. And you go, oh, we did it. So I think it's because of the team effort. That's what I love. the best thing about it.
Thank you
I
for
hope that helps
sharing.
answer. That's okay.
Thank you, girls. And you know that piece about collaboration, I think that's so indicative of the performing arts. You know, we do one of
Yeah.
these sessions once a month, and I think all the artists, that's been a point that they've brought up, is that teamwork and that collaboration. And again, that's just part of being in the performing arts.
Yeah.
So let's see
Definitely
if
so.
Katie has one last question. I know she needs to get to ballet class, but Katie, do you have another question you'd like to ask?
Yes, I do. What is your process when choreographing a dance thing? Like, I know someone that just like plays the music and dances along and write it down. What's yours?
So I will, if it's for, I guess, either a play or a musical, is I'll have read the script probably 3 or 4 times over. So the story is in very much in my head, and then I can listen to a song. When I was doing Little Shop and also the show I'm doing at the moment, I have the soundtrack in my head all the time. So I go for a run, and normally people run to running music, and I'm running to musicals because the music is just going in. So I'm sort of absorbing every beat and bar and orchestration, so that I feel that the music is it's now also in me. So then when I come to sort of then thinking about how I develop that movement, I remembered that little ting and I remembered that little beat there. So then narratively, I'm going back to the script and going, well, you know, is my body telling a story? Am I telling a story? So I think I keep going back to, am I telling a story? And I think if it's just a series of moves for no reason, like, oh, I'll put my arm up there because it looks good, I think it feels disconnected to me. So I need it to feel connected to the story. So, and I will video myself. I used to write, like you're saying, I used to write a lot of my choreography down, but it takes a long time to write, you know, 3-hour musical down. So I've started videoing myself, and then I'll, you know, write down something like refer to point 1 video, and I'll have a little video of like that sequence, because sometimes it's just quicker just for me to dance it and then video myself doing it, and then adapting it to the person I'm then putting it on, because sometimes it looks one way on me, then it looks totally different on another person's body. Yeah, that's kind of how I process it all. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
And so we have to watch for your Christmas special on NBC, right?
Yes,
This
yes,
Christmas.
this Christmas.
That's going to be
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
So Lizzie, I want to thank you so much, but I just want to mention a couple more things coming up at the center, and then we're going to bring all the students back on screen. Our next Car Front Seat is November 2nd at 7 p.m., and that's with the acclaimed jazz musician Todd Williams. So we are still have room for a few more students. Just email outreach@thecenterpresents.org if you'd like to participate in that. And I invite you to take a look at our website. We have so many educational programs and events that are happening. Some of those are hybrid. We're starting to do some things live at the center, but also giving the option of joining us through Zoom for everybody's comfort level. And then we're very excited to start a new series called Live at the Center. And that's starting this Friday with the Charlie Ballantyne Quartet. And that's our way of supporting local bands and musicians. So those will all be streaming for free. And we've got classical music, we've got country, we've got jazz, all different types of music. So I encourage you to come to our website and register for one of those programs. Again, those are all free. So students, if you would go ahead and turn your cameras back on. There's everyone. We want to thank you, and let's give Lizzie a round of applause too. Yay! And she's staying up late with us again. She's joining us from just outside of London, where it is 10:45 at night. Yeah. So thank you so much, Lizzie.
My pleasure.
And
thank you for having me. Thank you for some great questions as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Good night.
Bye.